Well, welcome to another episode of the More Than a Game podcast. And if you grew up watching and supporting the West Sydney Razorbacks back in the day, you'll be familiar with our next guest, because joining me on the podcast today is former NBL head coach Mark Watkins. And Mark's had a tremendous career. He's got an amazing resume. He has spent 11 seasons in the NBL as an assistant coach, first and foremost with the Canberra Cannons, then the West Sydney Razorbacks, before taking on the head coaching role at the start of the 2004-2005 NBL season. After that, he had a stint up in the Gold Coast with the Gold Coast Blaze for 2 seasons up there, where he was under Brendan Joyce and had an incredible team up there as well. And since finishing his time with the NBL, he's focused his attention more in the elite pathway system and developing future talent. He was a former coach of the Australian national basketball team, the under-17 men's team, who went on to win silver at the 2014 FIBA World Championships. He's now been recently announced as the head coach of the NBL 1 women's side for the Kilsyth Cobras, and we're looking forward to diving into all of that today. Mark Watkins, welcome to the More Than a Game podcast.
Oh, thanks, Stan. Thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure, mate. It's great to connect once again, mate, and looking forward to hearing more of your career. But before we start, I remember interviewing you back in 2009, if you remember, when I was a budding journalist studying journalism at uni. And at that time, the sport of basketball in this country was on its knees, and it was a bit of a more negative, I guess, interview and story that I was running. But now, 15 years later almost, it's taken off again. It's back to where it was, probably even better than it was in the 90s. What do you put that down to see the sport of basketball doing so well now?
I guess the foremost thing is the NBL. I think Larry Kesselman and his group have just transformed the NBL and put a lot of excitement back into that level of basketball, and just made it so professional. Adding the third import in there, having good quality basketball on TV live. Every game's live. You can watch that on Foxtel or KO, and then the women's league as well, the WNBL. That's now you can watch a lot of games live, and then the buzz about the Boomers and Opals has followed through. The amount of NBA players and WNBA players playing for our national teams is the most ever. And then them playing in those other leagues and players playing around Europe that's now put excitement in the senior level, which now, to me, as a junior player, junior coach and parent of a junior, I want to be a part of it. So how do I do that? And then that's playing domestic, getting into reps, making a state team, and then hopefully making an Australian junior team. So that pathway is all there for them now in our country, and the buzz is just ginormous, I think.
Absolutely, mate. No, it's been incredible. I was at the Kings game on Sunday afternoon and seeing 14,000 fans there. I remember when the Spirit, or the West Sydney Razorbacks, became the Spirit, it was pretty embarrassing to see under 1,000 at a game at the Entertainment Centre. So it was really encouraging to see. But you've got a great resume. We're going to dive into that, and particularly want to touch on elite pathways later on. But 11 seasons in the NBL coaching, junior national teams and the like. But where did it all start for Mark Watkins? How did you get involved in the sport of basketball?
My dad was a player. Played in the old NBL back then, which was where guys used to get in their cars and drive up to Sydney and drive to Adelaide and play the weekend and then drive home. And that's how the NBL started. With Lindsay and his group. My dad was with the St Kilda Police Boys, so I grew up with basketball. And then my dad decided to, with a few mates, create a junior club in Victoria here called EBs, which is out of the Nunawading Stadium. And and from there I've become a player, and then played there for quite a number of years, and then started coaching the little ones, as most coaches do or parents do. And then lucky enough to coach Barry Barnes's two boys, Brad and Cam. And from there, Barry thought I had potential as a coach, so I got offered a threes team at Nunawading in rep program. And we were probably the only club back then in reps that had a threes team. And so, yeah, that's where my rep coaching kicked off, and lucky enough to work my way up to coach a couple of ones teams and win
quite a few VC championships. At one stage, I was coaching the 16 boys and the 18 boys at Nunawading.
Wow.
And won two championships in the 1 year.
Gosh.
So that was when Nunawading was like, we were the pinnacle of Australian basketball. Our program with Barry Barnes in charge. And then, we had Tom Maher and in charge of the girls program as well. And it was a really good grounding for a lot of people at that club, a lot of coaches, a lot of players, a lot of referees, all came through that Nunawading system at that time. And then I got promoted to be a Vic Metro coach, assistant at Metro, and then won a championship with Sam McKinnon and Simon Dwight and Matt Shanahan, who were three famous NBL and Australian couple of boomer players. So I'm lucky enough to coach them as young blokes at 14 and 15 years old. Yeah, so I had that really good grounding. I was still coaching at EBs at the domestic level. Hall of Famer there and life member. I think now that has over 200 teams just domestically, which is it's huge. There's a lot of people in New South Wales wouldn't understand how big a domestic is here in Victoria, and it's just massive. We've got at Kilsyth Cobras right now, we have 1,200 domestic teams playing, all during the week, which is that's our club.
Gosh.
So that does good job as funding the club, but definitely the grassroots of basketball in Australia is really kicking some butt, and people want to be involved in it. Yeah. Do you want me to keep continuing? Well,
I was just keen to know. Was it?
So I'm just kind of trying to remember, my pathway, and the Victorian state teams was a big part of that. Lucky enough and honoured to coach Vic Metro, and then from there, I was identified by Patrick Hunt and Gordy McLeod, who were at the Australian Institute of Sport at that time, and they were looking for an assistant coach. So, I had a good chat with Ian Stacker, who was really one of my mentors besides Barry Barnes. And both those guys have really taught me a lot about the basic skills of the game. And I was I'm very lucky to have had those guys mentor me. And then it was time to move to the RAS and get mentored by Pat Hunt and Gordy McLeod, and got good 3 years at the RAS, and then got recruited to the Canberra Cannons. And that's when my NBL journey started. I was an assistant coach and went to a few final series with Brett Flanagan and some really good players, and Simon Dwight and Darnell Mee, Rob Rose, Ray Borner. You learn a lot as a coach from coaching great players. They can teach you as much as you're trying to teach them. Strange being a young coach coaching players who are older than you in the NBL and had a lot of experience. So you had to earn your stripes and earn the respect. And I hope I did that. I think I did. And then from there, I was lucky enough then sort of moved pathways and then went to the West Sydney Razorbacks, and did my time coaching both as assistant with Gordy McLeod, and then coaching the Bankstown Bruins in the SCABL back then. Won a Coach of the Year award, and coaching all just
all young blokes, that were on the Razorback squad list, and guys that were in Sydney that wanted to play in the SEABL. So, that was a good experience to do both. It was a long load, doing the NBL in the summer and then the SEABL in the winter. But kept me busy. I was a single guy. And if I had aspirations to climb the tree, you got to do the work.
That's right.
And get your name out there. Because, I had aspirations to be an NBL 1 head coach, after being with Gordy for a number of years. And then they moved Gordy on and I took over. And then, unfortunate for me, I guess, at that time, there was that big inquiry with the Canterbury Bulldogs. And money being shifted or under the table, etc. And then the Razorbacks paid for that because they were funded by the Leagues Club back then, as were the Canterbury Bulldogs. So the funding sort of reduced a lot when I took over, and therefore weren't able to recruit big players in my time that was there. And then halfway or quarter way through that season of I was in charge, the club decided to move me on. It was bad blood. I felt I was a scapegoat of a lot of issues that were going on, and it hurt me because I never got a head coaching job again. And I look back in hindsight, Dan, when I'm 57 now, and I was a young coach in the NBL.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and when I look at some of those young coaches that are aspiring to be that, I give them some advice. Do your time and do the work before, because you think you're ready and you're not. So that's why a lot of senior coaches around Australia, around the world, they're in their 40s and 50s because they've built up their experiences and then ready to showcase that, at the big league. And that's why, there's a lot of older coaches in the league because they're so wise. I wish I knew now what I knew back then. Sorry, the other way around, but
I think that comes back to mentoring, doesn't it? Like how much did you spoke about mentors earlier in your career, but did you have people you could lean on through those times back then?
Yeah, look, I spoke, during that time I was speaking a lot to Barry Barnes. He was my mentor, and still is. We stay in contact. But that's only just part of it. You got to sometimes you got to learn on the run. You got to make sure you got what I learned about my time with the Australian junior teams was recruiting and appointing good staff. So people that you can trust, and people that you can give them jobs and they're good at their job, and let them do it, and so they have ownership, and that way they'll work for you. So and I think we achieved that in those years that I was Australian head coach. And I learnt that a bit from Damien Cotter. When I was with him as an assistant coach with the 19s for a year, but he entrusted me. He said, I just want you to do whatever you want to do. I don't want you to sit next to me and take stats. He said, I want to hear from you. And so I learned a little bit about that, and then I entrusted that in Justin Schuller when I had Justin Schuller as my assistant for the 4 years, and I was trusting him to do his job, let him do it. He felt good about himself because he was contributing, as were the other assistant, and in Jamie, and then the support staff and the doctors, the physios, the manager. You let them do the thing, and then let them make the call. And if they make the call that this player can't play that game, then I've got to make sure that I'm adhering to your experience, your knowledge, So I'm putting faith in you, and then they feel good about it, and we're all buying into the culture that we were trying to achieve. So that's something I've learned over time, and I guess a silver medal at World Championships was proof in the pudding.
Yeah, 100%.
Hard as that was goes, but you got to have good players.
Yeah,
and have good players, and Isaac Humphries and Tom Wilson and DJ.
Yeah, great players.
They were all really good players in their own right. And then the rest is history. Yeah.
That's awesome, mate. Some great leadership lessons there, I find, because as leaders, I myself for one, like you can have ideas and dreams and visions, but you can only go so far by yourself. You need to trust those around you. So that's really encouraging, mate. But if I could harp back to the Razorbacks, because it did start so well. Like it was such a great organisation, and that's where I met you and had the opportunity to be coached by you back as a youngster. But what was it like being part of the Razorbacks when they first started, and what made it so successful? Within 3 seasons, you're the first Sydney team to make a grand final series, but what do you put that down to in terms of how much it grew in such a short space of time?
Yeah, I guess pretty much what I said before. Gordy put some good people around him. The money was there. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. The Leagues Club was all in.
Sure.
And it was a new franchise. So it was fresh. It was bubbly.
Yeah.
We were working from scratch, but you had Robbie Cadee there who had NBL experience. He had Gordy and myself who'd been in the NBL. So that group of CEO, head coach, assistant coach had good experience, good leadership, and then they were already in the marketing area when they were in the SCABL with the West Sydney Slammers.
Yep.
So sort of like it was just taking it up to another level, inverted. And as you said, the Kings were the flavour of Sydney. They're a big name, and they still are, and well known around the world. But I guess the people out west wanted their own team, and follow their own group, and as they have done with with the Panthers and in NRL and in that area there. And then, and the GWS Giants over the Sydney Swans, similar type of situation. So, and then the last thing was we recruited some pretty good players.
Yeah.
Some players.
Fantastic players.
We were recruiting rookies. We brought in John Riley, we brought in Simon Dwight, Bruce Bolden, Derek Rucker. There's 4 core guys, Scotty McGregor, guys that were already established in the NBL, had
Simon Dwight
championships, had championships, had MVPs.
Yeah.
So that was a good recipe. It was always going to be a good recipe for success.
Absolutely. It was. And I think when you look at the 2003-04 season, when you made the grand final series against the Kings, very unlucky not to win that, but I'm pretty sure that team was made up of, correct me if I'm wrong, purely Australian players that year.
It was.
Some fantastic players. So if I can touch on that, firstly, made against the grand final series against Adelaide, and unfortunate to lose that one. But then I reckon, being a Razorback fan back then, that series really stung. Can you harp back to those final 2 games? You looked like you had it as a group, and then those final 2 games just couldn't get over the hurdle. What happened in those 2 games? Was it just the Kings being too good, or?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never watched them back.
Yeah, of course. I can imagine.
Yeah, as you said, it hurt. We were right there in Game 5, had that lead, and then EBRR just, took over, and that's all I really remember about the game. I just remember the hurt, the disappointment, and it hurts still this day to be a coach that never got a ring, in the NBL after all those years.
Yeah.
But that was an opportunity lost, and you don't get those opportunities too often in life. So, coached well by Brian Gorgian, had some good leaders in that Sydney Kings team.
Yeah.
We
we did too. You know, it was a battle of the Titans, the two good teams that had really good players.
Yeah.
Both were coached well, both led well by senior players and coaches, which that's why it was one of the best, one of the greatest series, you know, that's been. If it was a 3-game series like it'd been the year before, we would have been champions. But in hindsight, you know, that's the way it goes. And Sydney took the most of their opportunities when it got presented, you know, and they come up champions. Yeah,
it's heartbreaking. I remember watching it as a 16-year-old, you know, teenager, and just like, wow, that was a lost game. But touching on the Razorbacks, just to finish up on the Razorbacks, and there's been a lot of talk about expansion in the NBL, and obviously it was such a great franchise, and you know, you spoke about the issues when you took on as head coach, and sort of spiraled downhill from there. For me, it was in some ways a victim of the league's demise in many ways. You know, lack of crowds, and there wasn't that much of an appetite for professional basketball back then, and you could say the same with the Gold Coast Blaze, which we'll come to. But when you look at expansion now, there's been a lot of talk about another Sydney team. Probably good, you know, there's appetite for more basketball now, so it would probably work. But do you bring back the West Sydney Razorbacks, or in your opinion, does it need to be a whole new franchise?
I think it needs to be a new franchise. You know, like pretty much like the Melbourne Phoenix, you know, situation. And then where do you put them demographically in Sydney?
Yeah.
Do they have their own stadium? You know, that's always been the biggest issue in Sydney. You know, is the facilities. Yeah. And the location of those facilities. Yeah. The New South Wales government really need to look at that if they want to expand the sport. You know, and in Sydney, you know, they certainly need some big stadium out west, you know, and then try and grow that like they have the GWS, and you know, they've got a great following now, you know, and they're putting a good product on the footy field. So if they can, the new franchise can follow in that footstep, but they need their own home, you know, that people and fans can go to and say, hey, this is our home, you know, this is our venue. We're not sharing it with anybody. This is us. It's a fortress, you know, and we want to make it the best possible place to come and be hard to play at. So, you know, that would be my advice to whoever is that's looking to expand that franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. In saying that, though, you do see United and Phoenix, they are in some way sharing High Sense or whatever it's called now, John Cain Arena. But I guess, you know, Phoenix do have that other option of going to the Heartland, as they call it. So do you think there's an opportunity there for them to expand and, you know, create another, I guess, venue down in Melbourne, or do you think there's enough down there?
No, I don't think there's any plans to. I know there's a lot of venues going up, especially out the Casey way. You know, they've got a 10-court stadium right now, and they've outgrown it. So they're looking to build another one like that. Yeah, only kilometres away, which is you know, that. But that's the demographic of that area right now, and I don't know. You know, Sydney's probably, you know, the Penrith area out there. You know, is that growing to that sort of rate as well for it to warrant having something like that out there?
Yeah, 100%. Be interesting to see what happens from here. But another option I've spoken about the NBL is the Gold Coast. They had the Blitz up there just recently, and obviously being a part of the Gold Coast Blaze after your time with the Razorbacks under Brendan Joyce. Just saying too, that was a great side back then. I remember going to watch a training session. Shane Hill, Pero Cameron, James Harvey. There were some legends playing for the Gold Coast Blaze as well, but it still went under. So the talk of the team going, or a team going up there once again, is it going to be sustainable? Because they have had 2 shots at it. In your opinion, coaching up there, being a part of the community up there, is it going to be sustainable? And once again, do the Blaze come back, or does it need to be another franchise once again?
Yeah, look, you know, the Blaze were owned by one owner, and Owen Tomlinson, I think his name was, and I don't think he realised when he first started how much money he was going to end up putting in, and I felt for him at the end, his heart was in the right place. He wanted to do it for the Gold Coast. He wanted, him and his family were invested in it, and good on them for doing that. But I don't think they realised, the extent of how much money was involved in running an NBL team at that time. Location, perfect location, right down at Broadbeach, and in a good stadium, hold a lot of people, plenty of access. Training facilities were good. Can Gold Coast fund in sponsorship, an AFL team, an NRL team, and an NBL 1 team? I don't know. Only the Lord Mayor could answer that. But I don't know. I don't think so. But I just don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
Fair enough. That'll also be interesting. But just touch on your time with the Blaze. That was a great group. As I said, Shane Hill came in and no doubt provided a lift for the group. Just obviously a legend of Australian sport, not just basketball. But it was a good, successful time there, I guess. All your memories of the time up there with the Blaze.
Yeah, making the playoffs, as a new franchise was huge for us, and winning a lot of games, and we had some good players again come and play for us.
Yeah.
And then Hammer, in the last season we were there, Hammer was on his way out as a retirement, but still had a lot to offer. The club and he's playing. He hadn't lost a lot, as a player, but he was certainly one to put bums on seats, bring people in. All the media, the marketing, was all positive. But the team that season just couldn't quite click together, and then and the rest is history. Where I lost my job, and then Brendan lost his job, and then we moved on to I moved back to Basketball New South Wales.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a good segue into the elite pathways because you spent some time there and obviously had the junior national squads as well. But in terms of the first question, in terms of the growth in this country, it's fair to say probably that the elite pathway system in Australia is also contributing to the success. What do you reckon?
Oh, look, I think people talk about the European system and how good that is, and how tough they do it, and how hard they work. I don't think we've got it quite right yet. I think there's too many people wanting fingers in the pie. Right. And when I say that, I use an example of a 15-year-old kid right now, playing domestic, playing reps. He's at a school where the school's demanding that he trains 2 or 3 times a week and plays his school game. And then Basketball Victoria want their slice of the pie, so he's in the SDP or NPP, and then he's in a state team, and then he's in an Australian team, and then his club wants him to maybe train with the youth league or the NBL 1. Sure. The kid's getting pulled left, right, and centre, and it's hard for a parent and a kid to say no to anything, and especially in the school saying, "Well, you're on a scholarship here, so you do what we say."
Yeah.
And then so who misses out? Well, it's the domestic club who started him. Yeah. And then it's the rep club that's taken him to the next level, and then and then all these other people want their time with him. It's difficult, So, and I know that they don't have that. They don't have that issue in Europe.
Yeah.
But we are still producing really good players. Why? Because people have listened to all that scenario that I've said, and we've educated the parents and the group
to say, well, workload and what's best for that player so that they can achieve their ultimate goal. We need to work together. And some will and some won't. And sometimes there's sacrifices made by a lot of people just to make sure that kid's health and well-being in the journey puts them in good stead to be the best player they can be.
I will say, mate. That's great. Hopefully we can get a system that works for all. It's a very interesting one there. But you've moved, obviously, and been working with the Kilsyth Cobras in the NBL 1 competition for a number of years now, and I guess reaping the rewards of your efforts in that club, because you've recently been announced as the women's head coach for the NBL 1 side, and no doubt a lot of your effort in the pathway system, you're going to be coaching some of those players that you've seen come through the junior ranks. What are you looking forward to most for the upcoming season next year?
I was actually commentating the last few years of those games as a DPC, and also running the Kilsyth Cobras, and we have our own elite program as well. And some of those girls that were, well, nearly all of them that I've selected to represent us in the NBL 1 have all come from our junior Cobras program.
That's great.
And my elite program that I run in the mornings, early mornings. So, that's going to be a good opportunity for me to coach those girls as a team. I've coached 2 of those girls the last 2 seasons in the under-18s. And both those girls made Vic Metro teams. So the reward is there. You can't talk pathway as a club if you're not going to live it. So we're a club of where we want to have as many Kilsyth Cobra juniors in our NBL 1 team as possible, and that means we're not giving spots away. You still got to earn it. And you got to get rid of that word entitlement. You've got to earn it, and then you've got to earn minutes. So, our boys program, the last couple of seasons, or men's program, has eight plus Cobra players in it. And hopefully this season we'll have at least 6 or 7 Cobra girls in it. So we want to be competitive, want to have a chance of winning it. So we want to top up those other spots with some WNBL players and a good American or import, and then give our girls an opportunity to possibly do well in NBL 1 and then maybe get a WNBL gig. So 2 of our girls currently in Nikita Young and Georgia Booth have both been selected to be a development player for the Flyers. So that's the pathway that which we want them to achieve, and then play for us in the winter season.
That's awesome.
So I'm looking forward to the challenge. I haven't coached my own senior team for quite a while. I think I put a good system in place in Kilsyth, and now it's about me showcasing that system at a senior level for our junior players and coaches to see that how that works, and how it can be successful. Because we've had a lot of success in the junior program since I took over, and this season alone, all our ones teams are in the top 4 in VC, which is Division 1, and that was the number 1 club in Victoria as having that many, besides the under 14 boys. So we're doing quite well. We've got about 50 kids in the Basketball Victoria program, elite programs, quite a number of coaches in there as well. So that's what I'm priding myself on, is about those who want to do it and who want to put the effort in. Hopefully you'll end up being the best you can be and achieve your goals and dreams.
That's awesome, mate. Speaking of which, in terms of that pathway of taking the next step to the NBL or WNBL, Is there a connection with any of the teams, or how's that process work in terms of getting kids or the juniors coming through and then taking that next step to the NBL? What's in place in that regard?
Yeah, no, there isn't actually. Phoenix talk about, as you said before, about the heartland, and a couple of our boys go down there and train, and they have in the past with United as well, and the Flyers and the Boomers in the women's program. So we, I think we'd be silly to shut the door on one NBL team and one WNBL team and just say we're exclusive, with those, because spots can open up in anywhere.
Yeah,
so, and even one of our boys last season went and tried out for the Jack Jumpers. So I because I have my experience around Australia, I have a lot of contacts, and so if I've got a player that I think deserves a crack at the big league, and then they call me and say, "What do you think?" and I'll endorse them, and I don't care where they play. I just want to see them play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Opportunities knock anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome, mate. Well, on your own ambitions, obviously been around a long time now, but as we finish up, are there any aspirations to get back to the NBL or WNBL at some point in your career?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would like to. There is one bucket list I haven't ticked yet, and that's the Olympics. I think we all as players, junior players, and then coaches, we want to aspire to represent our country, and then go to Olympics. I still have a dream of being in the NBA. Whatever happened, probably not. But what you got to dream, and you got to tell your dream, because if you don't dream, you're never gonna work hard to reach whatever your dreams are. So, and sometimes opportunities come to your way when you least expect it. And that's, I know that's happened to me a few times. So I thought my time with the Australian junior teams was done, and then coached New South Wales under 18 boys to a three-peat, and I got asked, to come and coach Australian under 17 team. So I thought that door was shut. I don't know about the NBL. Maybe that door's shut, but then someone might say, "Oh, I'm looking for an assistant," or we don't know. So, but I've got a family now. I've got a partner and three stepdaughters, and they're in horses. So I don't know that the time of traveling and all that. I'm happy with what I'm doing now, and I quite enjoy the other part of my life with my partner and going to horse events and seeing the girls do really well. That really makes me feel good. To see them, they're achieving things that I achieved a little bit in my sport, but just in a different sport. And I want to see them, hopefully, represent Australia one day at show jumping. That would be, something that I would dream about. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, Wacko. That's a great note to finish on, mate. But you've had a great career. It's still very much ahead of you. So we fingers crossed you may get another.
I'm 57 as a coach. When I look at all those old blokes coaching in the NWA and the NBA and in college, I'm like a spring chicken.
That's right.
So we'll wait and see. But thanks for having me on, Dan. I really appreciate good talking to you and
likewise,
reminiscing of the old days.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
And if I can, if anyone's, the people that are listening and watching, I'm proof that someone from domestic basketball playing and coaching at domestic can dream and work hard and climb the tree to coach in NBL 1, coach in NBL, coach an Australian team, go to a world championships, travel the world. You can do all those things if you put your mind to it. So that's my advice to the viewers and the listeners. If that's who you are, go for it.
Well said, mate. Well, Mark Watkins, appreciate it, mate. Thank you for joining us on the More Than a Game podcast.